Hi, in this video I'll be talking to you about the major differences between the PMBOK 4th edition and the 5th edition of the PMBOK. This video is brought to you by Wave Management Consulting. My name is Fahad Saadah. Before I start, let me highlight that this is a summary only, and I encourage you and urge you to read the 5th edition of the PMBOK because there has been a lot of improvements on the 4th edition. Let's start with a brief history about the PMI and the PMBOK. The PMI was founded in 1969. In 1983, the PMI's Ethics Standards and Accreditation Report was released. In 1987, the PMBOK was revised, and in 1996, the first edition of the PMBOK Guide was released. In 1998, the PMI was officially accredited by ANSI as a standards developer. In the year 2000, the PMBOK Guide second edition was released. 4 years after that, on the 31st of December, the third edition was released, and then the fourth and now the 5th edition is out there. So the 5th edition came out on the 31st of December 2012, and this book, this 5th edition, will be the basis for the PMP exam starting as of the 31st of July 2013. The PMI have made a few changes. Now the 5th edition it has more harmony between its sections and data and information. They made some additions, they made some reorganization and some renaming. To summarize the changes, we see this chart shows the different editions of the PMBOK. So this is the first, second, third, fourth edition and the 5th edition. We can see that the number of processes have changed. So now in the 5th edition we have 47 processes as opposed to 42 processes in the 4th edition, and this is the distribution of processes across the knowledge areas. And I must highlight that they have introduced a whole new knowledge area called Stakeholder Management. This chart summarizes the number of processes for each of the process groups, project management process groups. Let's start with a recap of the chart showing the processes and the relationship between the knowledge areas and the project management process groups. We all should know that by now, so this is just a refresher. As you can see, we have only 9 knowledge areas in the PMBOK 4th edition. Now let's look at the 5th edition and let's look at some of the changes. As I said, the PMI have done some renaming, so they renamed this from Direct and Manage Project Execution. Now they called it Direct and Manage Project Work. They introduced a new process here, and guys, you will notice that the PMI have introduced a planning process for every knowledge area. So in every knowledge area in the 5th edition of the PMBOK, you will see a process called Plan Something. So this is one of them. They renamed Verify to Validate, so now it's called Verify Scope. They introduced the new process in the project time management called Plan Schedule Management. They introduced the Plan Cost Management new process. They renamed this from Plan Quality to Plan Quality Management, simply to be consistent with the new processes they introduced for the planning. And they renamed perform quality control to quality control. They also renamed develop human resource plan to plan human resource management, again to be consistent. You will notice that there was a process here called Identify Stakeholders in the Project Communication Management. That was in the PMBOK4 edition. Now, this process has been moved or shifted to the newly introduced knowledge area of Project Stakeholders Management. So we'll see that later. They renamed Distribute Information to Manage Communications, and they removed the Manage Stakeholder Expectations and they moved it to the appropriate knowledge area of Stakeholder Management. They renamed Report Performance to Control Communications. I guess these two renames make sense. They make a lot of sense because during the executing and monitoring controlling, we don't only distribute information and report performance, we manage communications and we control communications. There's a lot more to managing and controlling communications than just distributing information and reporting performance. They renamed Monitor and Control Risks to Control Risks. Now, I honestly don't know why they removed the word monitor here, because we are in the monitoring controlling process group, but this is what they did, so we'll accept that. They renamed Plan Procurements to Plan Procurement Management, just to be consistent with the rest of the knowledge areas. They renamed Administer Procurements to Control Procurements, because we are in the controlling process group. And as I said, they introduced a whole new knowledge area. They called it Project Stakeholder Management. I guess they wanted to emphasize the importance of stakeholders and stakeholder management in your project. This is a new process they introduced. They called it Plan Stakeholder Management. And another new one, they called it Control Stakeholder Engagement. Okay, so to summarize the changes in Chapter 1, they introduced the concept of sub-programs and sub-portfolios. So we have programs being at the higher level, and under programs we can have more programs or portfolios. And the lower level programs, they are called now sub-programs or sub-portfolios. So it's just a renaming to make more sense. Now, the Project Management Office, there are 3 types of PMOs: the supportive, the controlling PMO, and the directive PMO. So they highlighted this in the 5th edition. And they introduced the concept of the project manager having to know about the organizational governance and strategy to successfully manage the project. Right, let's take a look at the ITTOs, inputs, tools and techniques, and outputs for the various processes. We'll start with the Develop Project Charter. Let's have a look at the changes they introduced. They renamed contract to agreements. I guess it's a wider meaning. They introduced a new tool and technique called Facilitation Techniques. The Develop Project Management Plan process, they renamed planning to other. So now it's called outputs from other processes. In the PMBOK4, it used to be outputs from planning processes. I guess the use of the word other is a wider use as well, or gives a wider meaning. There's a new tool and technique, Facilitation Techniques. Direct and manage project work. We have a new tool and technique called Meetings. They renamed information to data. Monitor and control project work. We have three inputs or new inputs: schedule forecasts, cost forecasts, and validated changes. They renamed performance reports to performance information. So now it's called work performance information as opposed to work performance reports. We have three new items in the tools and techniques: analytical techniques, project management information system, and meetings. We also have a new item on the outputs list called work performance reports. The process perform integrated change control. They renamed information to reports. They introduced a new technique, meetings, and they renamed meetings to tools. So now it's called change control tools instead of change control meetings, as it was called in PMBOK4. In the outputs, they renamed change request status updates to approve change requests. And we have a new output, which is change log. Close project or phase. Two new items in the tools and techniques: analytical techniques and meetings. Collect requirements. We have three new inputs: scope management plan, requirements management plan, stakeholder management plan. Three new tools and techniques: benchmarking, context diagrams, document analysis. They removed requirements management plan from the outputs. Define scope. They introduced scope management plan as a new input. They renamed identification to generation, so it's now called alternatives generation. Create WBS. A new input, scope management plan. Another one, EEF, enterprise environmental factors. We have a new tool and technique, expert judgment, and they removed two items from the outputs, WBS and WBS dictionary. Remember, guys, that these two are part of the scope baseline, and since we have the scope baseline here, there is no need to list WBS and WBS dictionary. It would be as if we are repeating ourselves. So they made it better, I guess. Validate scope. They renamed validated to verified deliverables. And we have a new input of work performance data. We have a new tool and technique, group decision making techniques, and a new output work performance information. Control scope. They did some reordering, as I mentioned before, so you will see that some of the items, they just moved them from one place to the other within the same list. They also renamed information to data, so now it's called work performance data instead of work performance information. We will see that across the rest of the processes now they use work performance data. They renamed measurements to information, I guess because work performance information has a wider meaning. And they did some reordering. Define activities. New input, schedule management plan. They deleted the templates, tools and techniques, or from the tools and techniques list. Sequence activities. A new input, schedule management plan, and enterprise environmental factors. They renamed applying leads and lags to leads and lags. They removed schedule network updates from the tools and techniques list. Estimate activity resources. New input, schedule management plan, and risk register and activity cost estimates are new inputs as well. Estimate activity durations. Schedule management plan is a new input here, as well as risk register and resource breakdown structure. They renamed estimates to estimating, so now it's called 3-point estimating. A new tool and technique called group decision making techniques has been added. Develop schedule. Schedule management plan has been added there, as well as risk register, project staff assignments, resource and resource breakdown structure. In the tools and techniques, they renamed resource leveling to resource optimization techniques. They added modeling techniques as a replacement tool and technique to the what-if scenario analysis. So you'll see that what-if scenario analysis has been deleted or disappeared from the tools and techniques list, and it was replaced by modeling techniques. They renamed applying leads and lags to leads and lags, just like they did with the previous process, just to be consistent. They did some reordering of some of the items on the output list. We have two new outputs, project calendars and project management plan updates. Schedule control. Excuse me. They renamed information to data. They introduced two new inputs, project calendars and schedule data. They deleted from the tools and techniques variance analysis, and they renamed resource leveling to resource optimization techniques. They also added a new tool and technique called modeling techniques, which replaces the what-if scenario analysis. They renamed adjusting leads and lags to leads and lags. They also renamed measurements to information, so now it's called work performance information. We have a new output called schedule forecasts, and they did some reordering as well. Estimate costs. There's a new input, cost management plan. They renamed human resource plan to human resource management plan. That's the proper name for it. And they did some reordering. They renamed in the tools and techniques, they renamed estimates to estimating, just like they did with the 3-point estimating. So now this one is called bottom-up estimating, as opposed to bottom-up estimates, which was the name for it in the 4th edition of the PMBOK. They introduced a new tool and technique called group decision-making techniques. In the determine budget process, we have a new input, cost management plan, as well as risk register and agreements, which replaces contracts. So they deleted contracts and they replaced it with agreements. They did some reordering of some of the items as well. In the outputs list, they renamed cost performance baseline to cost baseline. Control costs. They renamed information to data. They deleted the variance analysis from the tools and techniques list. And we have a new item on this list, which is called reserve analysis. In the outputs list, they renamed measurements to information. They renamed budget to cost, so now it's called cost forecasts as opposed to budget forecast, and they did some reordering here. Plan quality management, new input, which is the project management plan. They deleted cost performance baseline and schedule baseline from the input list. They introduced a new input as well called requirements documentation. In the tools and techniques, we have a new input called 7 basic quality tools, which incidentally replaces the control charts here. They also deleted flow charting, proprietary quality measurement methodologies. We also have meetings as a new tool and technique item here, and in the outputs list they did some shuffling or reordering. Perform quality assurance. They removed project management plan, they replaced it with quality management plan. They also introduced the new input of process improvement plan. They also deleted work performance information from the input list. And they added project documents to the same list as well. In the tools and techniques, they added quality management and control tools, which replaced plan quality and perform quality control tools. Which replaced plan quality and perform quality control tools and techniques. So this item replaced that. They did some reordering here in the outputs list. Control quality. They renamed measurements to data, so we have work performance data. They introduced a new input, which is project documents. In the tools and techniques, they introduced the 7 basic quality tools as a single item, which incidentally replaces all these. So in PMBOK4, we used to have all these listed as tools and techniques: cause and effect diagrams, control charts, flow charting, histogram, Pareto chart, run chart, and scatter diagrams. So these are 7 tools that used to be listed here. They replaced them with just the one item which combines all 7, and they called it 7 basic quality tools. In the outputs list, they renamed validated to verified. They introduced a new output, which is work performance information, and they reordered some of the items on that list. In the plan human resource management process, we have a new input, which is the project management plan. In the tools and techniques, we have 2 new items: expert judgment and meetings. And in the outputs list, they renamed human resource plan to human resource management plan. That's the proper name for it, as we said. In the acquire project team process, we have a new input of human resource management plan, which replaced the project management plan. So they deleted project management plan and they replaced it with human resource management plan. On the tools and techniques list, they added a new item, which is multi-criteria decision analysis. In the develop project team process, we have a new input, which is human resource management plan, which again replaced the project management plan on the same list. On the tools and techniques list, we have a new item added there: personnel assessment tools. Manage project team. We have human resource management plan as a new input, which again replaced the project management plan. We also have the issue log added to this list. And notice, guys, the issue log was deleted from the tools and techniques list. So in PMBOK4, issue log was here in the tools and techniques list. So they deleted it from there and added it as an input. Back to the inputs. So they renamed performance reports to work performance reports. On the outputs list, we have a new item, project document updates. We also have reordering. Plan communications management. A new item there, project management plan. They deleted stakeholder management strategy. In the tools and techniques, they added meetings. In the managed communications, this was distribute information. So in PMBOK4, this process was called distribute information. And as we said, guys, managing communications has a lot more than just distributing information. So they removed the process, distribute information, and they replaced it with managed communications. It's a kind of renaming, I guess. So in the inputs we have communications management plan, which replaced the project management plan. They also introduced a new input, which is the EEF. They renamed performance reports to work performance reports. On the tools and techniques list, we have two new items: communication technology and communication models. They also renamed information distribution tools to information management systems, because we really use management systems, information management systems, rather than just distribution tools. We manage information. They also introduced a new item called performance reporting. On the outputs, you may notice that the numbering here is not in the right order. So this is one of the small printing errors that you will find in the PMBOK, okay, in the early editions or in the early copies of the PMBOK. But anyway, not to worry much about it. So on the outputs list of this process, we have three new items: project communications, project management plan updates, and project documents updates. This is also renamed from report performance. So in PMBOK4 it used to be called report performance. Now the process is called control communications. Again, guys, because we really control communications in this process as opposed to only reporting performance. We have two new inputs: project communications and issue log. They renamed information to data. They deleted work performance measurements from the inputs list, as well as budget forecasts was deleted. In the tools and techniques, they replaced all the tools and techniques which were in the 4th edition of the PMBOK, and they replaced them with these three items: information management systems, expert judgment, and meetings. On the outputs list, they renamed performance reports to work performance information, and we also have two new items introduced here: project management plan updates and project document updates. In the process called plan risk management, we have three new inputs which replace those inputs. So they deleted project scope statement, cost management plan, schedule management plan, communications management plan. They replaced it with project management plan, project charter, and stakeholder register. If you notice, guys, that all these four are contained in the project management plan. So the project management plan replaces all four, and they introduced the project charter and stakeholder register as inputs because they play a big part in the risk planning. Tools and techniques. They deleted the planning, meetings, and analysis as a tool and technique, and they replaced it with three techniques: analytical techniques, expert judgment, and meetings. Identify risks. Human resource management plan is a new input, as well as procurement documents. Perform qualitative risk analysis. Scope baseline is a new input which replaced project scope statement. Again, guys, scope baseline contains the project scope statement, and it also contains the WBS and WBS dictionary. Enterprise environmental factors is a new input as well, and they did some reordering of the items. In the outputs, we have project documents updates, replacing the risk register updates, because we actually could be updating more than just the risk register here. Perform quantitative risk analysis. EAF is a new input, and they did some reordering there. And the output is the same as they did with qualitative risk analysis. They replaced risk register updates with project documents updates. Plan risk responses, they reordered those two inputs. They deleted the risk register updates and risk-related contract decisions. Control risks, they renamed information to data. They renamed performance reports to work performance reports, and they did some shuffling there. They renamed in the tools and techniques, they renamed status meetings to meetings, because we really could be having meetings, not only status meetings, any type of meetings. In the outputs, we have work performance information as a new output, and they deleted the risk register updates, and they did some reordering there. Plan procurements. Project management plan is a new input. They deleted teaming agreements. They also deleted risk-related contract decisions from the inputs, as well as cost performance baseline was deleted. In the tools and techniques, they added two items: market research and meetings. And they deleted the contract types from the tools and techniques. In the outputs, they did some shuffling or reordering, and they introduced a new item there called project documents updates. Conduct procurements. They deleted the qualified seller list from the inputs, as well as they deleted teaming agreements. They introduced a new input, which is the procurement statement of work, SOW. In the tools and techniques, they replaced internet search with analytical techniques. Analytical techniques is a wider term, so we could be using other tools or means to conduct our research and analysis, which is not related to the internet. So why restrict it to internet search? In the outputs, they introduced agreements as an output, which replaced procurement contract award. Control procurements, they introduced a new input, which is agreements. Again, it replaced contracts. They renamed performance reports to work performance reports, as well as information was renamed to data, and they did some shuffling there. In the outputs list, they removed or deleted procurement documentation and replaced it with work performance information. They also introduced project documents updates as a new item in the outputs, and they did some reordering. Closed procurements. They renamed negotiated settlements to procurement negotiations. It's just a more correct term for it, I suppose. Identify stakeholders. This now we are in the newly introduced knowledge area of project stakeholder management. So we have a new tool and technique, which is meetings. They deleted stakeholder management strategy from the outputs list. Manage stakeholder engagement. We have a new input, which is stakeholder management plan, which replaced stakeholder register and stakeholder management strategy, because those two would be included in the stakeholder management plan. We also have communications management plan as an input to this process. They deleted project management plan issue log from the inputs. They added the issue log to the outputs as a new output there, as well as they introduced project documents updates to the outputs list, and they did some shuffling. That concludes our video, which summarized the differences between the 5th edition and the 4th edition of the PMBOK guide, brought to you by Wave Management Consulting, helping you ride the wave. Thank you very much for your time. I hope that you found this video helpful, and again, I encourage you to read the 5th edition of the PMBOK. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.